The sun was setting in Seoul's busy Mapo district. 15-year-old Kim Do-han walked home from his after-school math club, his backpack heavy with books. He was happy because he had solved all the hard math problems that day. His mother would be proud. The street was getting dark as shops turned on their bright signs. Do-han checked his phone. It was 7:30 p.m. He needed to hurry home for dinner. His older brother Sung-min was visiting, and Mom was making their favorite soup. As he turned down a quieter street, a police car's lights flashed behind him. Do-han stopped walking, confused. He hadn't done anything wrong. The police car stopped, and Officer Park Jae-won stepped out. He was tall and had a mean look on his face. "Hey you, what are you doing here?" Officer Park asked in a loud voice. He walked up to Do-han, looking down at him. "I'm going home from school, sir," Do-han said politely. His hands were shaking a little, but he stayed calm. His parents had taught him to always be respectful to police officers. Officer Park walked around Do-han in a circle, like a wolf studying its prey. "Empty your backpack," he ordered, pointing to the ground. Do-han carefully took out his books and papers. His math competition medal fell out too, making a small sound on the concrete. "What's this?" Officer Park picked up the medal. "Did you steal it?" "No, sir. I won it at the math competition today," Do-han explained. His voice was quiet but clear. Officer Park laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. He threw the medal back on the ground. Then he pulled out his phone and started recording. "I bet you think you're smart," he said. He reached into his pocket and took out a pack of cigarettes. Do-han's heart started beating faster. He had never smoked before. His parents had taught him it was bad for health. "Take one," Officer Park ordered, holding out the pack. "Sir, I don't smoke. I'm only 15, Do-han said. He tried to sound brave, but his voice shook. Officer Park moved closer. "Take it, or I'll arrest you for disrespecting an officer." He was still recording with his phone, smiling now. With trembling fingers, Do-han took a cigarette. His eyes were burning with tears he tried not to shed. "Light it," Officer Park commanded, holding out a lighter. "Show everyone what a tough guy you are." Do-han thought about running, but he was too scared. Other people walked past on the main street, but no one stopped to help. They looked away when they saw the police car. The cigarette shook in Do-han's hand as Officer Park made him light it. The smoke burned his throat, making him cough hard. Officer Park laughed louder, moving his phone closer to record Do-han's face. "Inhale deeper," Officer Park ordered. "Show me how cool you are." Do-han took another puff, coughing even harder. Tears rolled down his cheeks now. He felt sick to his stomach. After what felt like forever, Officer Park finally let him stop. "Now everyone will see what kind of troublemaker you really are," he said, putting his phone away. "Get out of here." Do-han quickly put his books back in his backpack. His hands were still shaking. He picked up his math medal last, now scratched from being thrown on the ground. As he walked away, he heard Officer Park call out, "Don't let me catch you around here again." Do-han walked fast until he turned the corner. Then he ran all the way home, his lungs burning from the smoke and fear. The taste of cigarettes stayed in his mouth, making him feel sick. When he reached his apartment building, he stopped to catch his breath. His mother's soup would be ready now, and his brother Sung-min would be waiting. But how could he tell them what happened? How could he explain why he smelled like cigarettes? Do-han wiped his face and tried to calm down, but he knew this night would change everything. He just didn't know how much. Do-han stood outside his apartment door for 5 minutes. He tried to make the smell of smoke go away by waving his hands around his uniform, but it didn't help. Finally, he had to go inside. His hands shook as he put the key in the lock. The warm smell of his mother's soup filled the apartment. In the kitchen, he heard his family talking and laughing. His brother Sung-min's voice was the loudest, telling a funny story about his work. "Do-han, is that you?" his mother called out. "Come eat before the soup gets cold." I need to change first, Du-han said. He tried to run to his room, but Sung Min was already walking into the hallway. Sung Min was tall and looked very professional in his work clothes. He stopped when he saw Du-han's face. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. Du-han couldn't hold it in anymore. Tears started falling down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Sung Min walked closer and then stopped suddenly. "Why do you smell like cigarettes?" His voice was serious now. Their mother came into the hallway too. Du-han. She looked worried. Du-han tried to explain, but he started crying harder. Sung Min guided him to his room and closed the door. Their parents waited outside. "Tell me what happened," Sung Min said. He sat next to Du-han on the bed. "All of it." Slowly, Du-han told the story. He told about Officer Park stopping him, making him empty his backpack, and forcing him to smoke while recording it. His hand shook as he showed Sung Min the scratched math medal. Sung Min listened without interrupting. But Du-han could see his brother's hands getting tighter and tighter until his knuckles were white. "He said everyone would see what kind of troublemaker I am," Du-han finished. "He's going to show that video to people." Sung Min stood up and walked to the window. He stayed quiet for a long time. When he turned around, his face was very serious. "Listen to me," he said. "You did nothing wrong. That officer broke the law. He hurt you, and he recorded himself doing it." Their parents came in then. Mother hugged Du-han while father asked questions. When they heard the whole story, mother started crying, and father looked afraid. "We should just forget about it," father said. "Making trouble with the police will only bring more problems." "No," Sung Min said firmly. "This isn't about trouble. This is about right and wrong." "But what can we do?" Mother asked. She held Du-han's hand tightly. "We're just one family." Sung Min walked to his brother and knelt in front of him. "Du-han, look at me," he said. "That officer thinks he can hurt people because he has power. He thinks no one will stop him." Du-han wiped his eyes. "He's done this before." "Probably," Sung Min said. "But that's going to end now." He pulled out his phone and started typing. "I work in cybersecurity. I know how to find digital evidence. That video he took, it's not going to hurt you. It's going to hurt him." "But what if he comes back?" Du-han asked. He was still scared. "He won't," Sung Min promised, "because I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person he really is." This ends now. Their parents looked worried, but they didn't argue anymore. They could see the determination in Sung Min's eyes. That night, Du-han couldn't eat the soup, but for the first time since the incident, he felt a little bit of hope. His brother was the smartest person he knew. If Sung Min said he could fix this, then maybe everything would be okay. In his home office, Sung Min stayed up late, his computer screens glowing in the dark. He was already building a plan. Officer Park had made a big mistake, and he was going to learn that some people fight back. Sung Min sat in his home office early the next morning. 3 computer screens glowed in front of him. On one screen, he had a map of the street where Officer Park had stopped Du-han. On another screen, he had a list of all the shops and buildings in that area. The third screen showed his email inbox. He had already sent polite emails to all the shop owners nearby. He asked if they had security cameras facing the street. Many shops wrote back quickly, wanting to help when they heard what happened. "Look at this," Sung Min said to Du-han, who sat quietly beside him. A security video showed the whole incident from the corner shop's camera. Even though it was far away, they could clearly see Officer Park making Du-han empty his backpack. "There's more," Sung Min said. He typed quickly on his keyboard. "I found something interesting about Officer Park." More videos appeared on the screens. They showed Officer Park stopping other young people on different days. Each time, he picked people who looked different or foreign. Each time, he made them feel scared and small. "He does this all the time," Du-han said softly. "But why doesn't anyone stop him?" Sung Min opened a folder on his computer. People tried. Look at these complaint reports I found. 10 people filed complaints against Officer Park in the last year, but nothing happened to him. Doohan leaned closer to read. What happened to the complaints? They disappeared, some men explained. Someone at the police station helped hide them. But they didn't hide them well enough. I found copies in the old computer records. Just then, Sung Min's phone rang. It was Lee Jae-yun, a lawyer who helped people fight against police bullying. Sung Min had emailed her the night before. Mr. Kim, she said when Sung Min answered, I looked at the evidence you sent. This is very serious. Can we meet today? 2 hours later, Sung Min and Doohan sat in Lee Jae-yun's office. She had a kind face and spoke in a calm, strong voice. Papers and photos covered her desk. Officer Park has hurt many people, she said. But this time, he made big mistakes. He recorded himself breaking the law. He forced a minor to smoke. He abused his power. And you have proof. Will that be enough? Sung Min asked. Lee Jae-yun smiled. It's a start. But we need more. We need to find the other people he hurt. We need to show this isn't just one incident. It's a pattern. Sung Min pulled out his laptop. I can help with that. I'm good at finding digital traces people leave behind. Officer Park wasn't careful. He liked to brag online about teaching lessons to people he stopped. Perfect, Lee Jae-yun said. I'll start the official complaint process. You keep digging. The more evidence we find, the harder it will be for them to ignore this. On the way home, Doohan was quiet. Finally, he asked, what if it doesn't work? What if he's too powerful? Sung Min stopped walking and turned to his brother. No one is too powerful when they're wrong. Officer Park thinks he can hurt people because he wears a badge. But he forgot something important. What's that? Doohan asked. In a world with cameras everywhere and people who care about justice, bullies can't hide forever. We have the truth on our side. And the truth is the most powerful weapon of all. At home that night, Sung Min worked late again. His screens filled with more evidence, more videos, more complaints, more proof of Officer Park's bad behavior. Soon, everyone would know the truth. The officer who loved to record himself hurting others was about to learn a hard lesson about being watched. The law office of Lee Jae-yun was busy that morning. Papers covered every surface, and 3 computers showed different videos of Officer Park. Sung Min sat with the lawyer, explaining everything he had found. In the past 5 years, Sung Min said, pointing to a thick folder, Officer Park stopped and harassed 53 young people. All of them were minorities or foreigners. 20 of them were under 18 years old. Lee Jae-yun nodded seriously. And you found proof for each case? Yes. Sung Min opened his laptop. Security cameras caught 32 incidents. 7 people took secret videos with their phones. And 15 people filed complaints that were hidden. A young man knocked on the office door. It was Kim Ta-won, one of Officer Park's first victims from 5 years ago. He looked nervous as he sat down. Thank you for coming, Lee Jae-yun said kindly. Can you tell us what happened to you? Ta-won's hands shook as he spoke. I was 16. Officer Park said I looked suspicious. He made me stand in the rain for an hour while he checked my bag over and over. He kept saying I must have stolen something. Did you report it? Sung Min asked. Yes, but Captain Choi said I was lying. He threw away my complaint. Ta-won looked down. After that, Officer Park would drive by my school every day, just to scare me. More people came to the office that day. Each person told a similar story. Officer Park had bullied them, scared them, and made them feel helpless. Captain Choi had helped cover up every complaint. Lee Jae-yun recorded all their stories. She took pictures of bruises from rough handling. She collected copies of ignored complaints. Everything went into a big file she called the evidence. This is more than just one bad officer, she explained to Sung Min. This shows a whole system that lets police hurt people and hide the truth. Sung Min worked on his laptop, adding more proof to their case. He found emails between Officer Park and Captain Choi, planning how to hide complaints. He found messages where they laughed about scaring young people. "Look at this," he said, showing Lee Jae-yun his screen. Officer Park posted online about Doohan's incident. He wrote, "Taught another troublemaker a lesson today. Maybe now he'll learn respect." "He's proud of being cruel," Lee Jae-yun said sadly. "But that pride will be his downfall." He posted evidence of his own crimes. That evening, Doohan came to the office after school. He looked at all the evidence spread across the room. "All these people," he said quietly. "He hurt all of them." "Yes," Sung-min said, putting his hand on his brother's shoulder. "But you know what's different now." "What?" "Now they're not alone anymore. Now they're standing together. And together, we're stronger than any bully with a badge." Lee Jae-yun started putting papers into official folders. "Tomorrow," she said, "we take this to internal affairs. With this much evidence, they can't ignore us." "What if they try?" Doohan asked. "Then we go to the media," Sung-min said firmly. "The whole city will see what Officer Park and Captain Choi have been doing. Sometimes justice needs a little light to grow." They worked late into the night, making copies of everything. Each piece of evidence told part of a bigger story. It was a story about power being misused, about fear being used as a weapon, and about people finally fighting back. Tomorrow would change everything. Officer Park didn't know it yet, but his days of hurting people were almost over. Officer Kang Hae-nul from Internal Affairs sat behind her large desk, looking at the thick folders of evidence. Her face showed no emotion as Lee Jae-yun and Sung-min presented their case against Officer Park. "These are serious accusations," Officer Kang said, closing the last folder. "But Officer Park has a clean record. Captain Choi has given him excellent reviews for years. The record is clean because they hid the complaints," Sung-min explained. He opened his laptop and showed her the deleted files he had found. "Look at these dates. Every time someone complained, Captain Choi erased it from the system." Officer Kang leaned forward slightly. "That would be very hard to prove." Lee Jae-yun pulled out another folder. "We have proof. Here are 53 cases. Each one has evidence, videos, pictures, or witness statements. Officer Park recorded many incidents himself, including what he did to young Doohan last week." The Internal Affairs officer picked up Doohan's file. She watched the video of Officer Park forcing him to smoke. For the first time, her professional mask cracked a little. "He recorded this himself." "Yes," Sung-min said. "He was proud of it. He posted about it online afterward." Officer Kang stood up and walked to her office window. She stayed quiet for a long time. When she turned back, her face was serious. "You understand what you're asking. Captain Choi has powerful friends in the department." "We understand," Lee Jae-yun said firmly. "But the truth has power too." Officer Kang sat down at her computer and began typing. "I'm ordering all of Officer Park's body camera footage for the past 5 years. I'm also requesting access to all deleted complaint files." She looked up at them. "This will take time." But time wasn't on their side. The next morning, Captain Choi called an emergency meeting at the police station. He told everyone that troublemakers were trying to hurt the department's reputation. He said they should ignore any questions about Officer Park. Officer Kang didn't give up. She worked late every night, going through the evidence. She interviewed people who had filed complaints. She checked security cameras and phone records. Slowly, the true picture emerged. 1 week later, she called Lee Jae-yun. "I found something," she said. "Captain Choi didn't just hide complaints. He destroyed evidence. He deleted videos. He threatened witnesses. This goes deeper than we thought." That afternoon, they met in Officer Kang's office again. The room was filled with new evidence boxes. "Officer Park was just the start," she explained. "Captain Choi protected other bad officers too. He created a whole system to hide police misconduct." "What happens now?" Sung-min asked. "Now we take this higher," Officer Kang said. "I've called the police commissioner's office. They're sending a special investigation team. Captain Choi found out about the investigation the next day. He stormed into internal affairs, his face red with anger. "You're making a big mistake," he told Officer Kang. "This will ruin careers." "Yes," Officer Kang said calmly. "It will, starting with yours." That evening, Officer Kang met with Doohan and his family. "Your brother and Ms. Lee brought us good evidence," she told Doohan. "But you were the spark. Your case broke the silence. Sometimes it takes one brave person to help others find their courage." Doohan looked at his brother and smiled. The fear in his eyes was finally starting to fade. Justice was slow, but it was coming. Officer Park and Captain Choi were about to learn that no one was above the law. Yoon Mei-rae sat at her desk at the Seoul Daily News, watching the videos for the third time. As one of the city's most respected journalists, she had seen many disturbing stories, but this was different. The evidence that Lee Jae-yun and Sung-min had brought her showed years of systematic abuse of power. "We need to run this story immediately," Mei-rae told her editor. "The public needs to know what's happening in their police department." The editor agreed. The next morning, the story appeared on the front page of the Seoul Daily News. Police officers' record of abuse exposed. Years of misconduct hidden by department leadership. The article included clear details about Officer Park's actions. It described how he had targeted minorities and young people. It explained how Captain Choi had helped hide the evidence. Most importantly, it included links to the videos Officer Park had recorded himself. The public response was immediate and powerful. Other newspapers picked up the story. Television news stations played the videos, including the recording of Officer Park forcing Doohan to smoke. People were especially angry about that video. Social media exploded with reactions. People shared their own stories of encounters with Officer Park. More videos appeared, taken by shop owners and passers-by. Each one showed the same pattern of bullying and abuse. Officer Park tried to defend himself. He went on television and said he was just doing his job. But when the interviewer showed him his own videos, he had no good answers. He just sat there, looking angry and scared. Captain Choi refused to talk to reporters. But someone leaked his emails, showing how he had worked to protect bad officers. The emails proved he had deliberately hidden complaints and threatened people who spoke up. The police commissioner called an emergency press conference. "We have failed our community," he admitted. "This behavior is unacceptable. We are taking immediate action to address these serious problems." That afternoon, Sung-min and Doohan watched the news with their parents. The top story showed Officer Park being escorted from the police station. He wasn't wearing his uniform anymore. His face was red with shame as reporters took his picture. "The system protected him for so long," Sung-min said. But he forgot that in today's world, the truth always finds a way out. More victims came forward to tell their stories. The Seoul Daily News set up a special hotline. Mei-rae worked long hours, interviewing people and checking their evidence. Each news story made the public more angry. Community leaders demanded changes. They wanted better training for police officers. They wanted new rules about body cameras. Most importantly, they wanted a new system for handling complaints about police misconduct. Lee Jae-yun appeared on television to explain the case. "This isn't about attacking all police officers," she said. "Most officers work hard to protect people. This is about stopping the bad ones who abuse their power." A week after the story broke, thousands of people gathered in front of the police headquarters. They carried signs asking for justice. Many young people shared their stories of being harassed by police. Doohan stood with his brother at the rally. He felt strong now, not scared. "Will things really change?" he asked Sung-min. "Yes," Sung-min answered. "Because now everyone knows the truth, and when enough people demand justice, those in power have to listen." The story wasn't over, but the biggest step had been taken. The truth was out, and it couldn't be hidden again. John looked around the dark cave. He could barely see anything. He took out his flashlight and turned it on. The beam of light revealed the rocky walls of the cave. Water dripped from the ceiling, making a soft plopping sound. John walked slowly forward, shining his light all around. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he had a feeling something important was in this cave. As he went deeper into the cave, the air got colder. John zipped up his jacket to stay warm. Suddenly, John's light landed on something shiny. He moved closer to get a better look. It was a small metal box about the size of his hand. The box looked very old. John picked it up and examined it. There was a latch on the side. With shaking hands, John undid the latch and opened the box. Inside was a folded piece of paper. John took it out and unfolded it carefully. It was a map, drawn in faded ink. John studied the map closely. It showed the cave system and had an X marked in one spot. A treasure map. John couldn't believe it. He never imagined he would find something like this. John decided to follow the map and see where it led. With mounting excitement, he set off deeper into the cave, map in hand. He navigated the twists and turns, constantly checking the map. His heart raced as he got closer to the X. After what felt like hours, John finally reached the spot marked on the map. He shone his light around, looking for any sign of treasure. At first he saw nothing, but then his light fell upon a small alcove in the rock wall. John hurried over to it and peered inside. There, nestled in the alcove, was a wooden chest. John stared in amazement at the wooden chest nestled in the alcove. His heart pounded as he reached in and pulled it out. The chest was heavier than it looked. John set it down on the cave floor and examined the ornate carvings decorating its surface. With trembling hands, John unlatched the chest and slowly lifted the lid. As he did, a golden glow emanated from within. John gasped. The chest was filled to the brim with gold coins, gemstones, and jewelry. John had found a real treasure, just like in the stories. He couldn't believe it was actually happening to him. Questions raced through his mind. Who did this treasure belong to? How long had it been hidden here? And most importantly, what was he going to do with it? John sat back, his mind reeling as he tried to process this incredible discovery. He had to decide what his next steps would be. Should he take the treasure and run? Try to find out who it rightfully belonged to? Or something else? As John pondered what to do, a low rumble began to echo through the cave. Small pieces of rock fell from the ceiling. The rumble quickly grew into a loud roar. An earthquake. John realized the cave was collapsing. John hurriedly grabbed as much treasure as he could stuff into his pockets and bag. Then he sprinted for the exit as rocks crashed down all around him. He ran faster than he ever had before, adrenaline surging through his veins. Just as the cave entrance came into view, a huge boulder fell directly in John's path. John managed to leap over it at the last second and tumble out into the open air. Behind him, the cave completely collapsed, sending a billowing cloud of dust into the sky. John stood up, coughing and brushing himself off. He looked at the pile of rubble that had once been the cave entrance. He couldn't believe how close he had come to being trapped inside. That hidden treasure had nearly cost him everything. As the dust settled, John checked his pockets and bag. His eyes widened. Even the small amount he had managed to grab in his rush to escape added up to a fortune. He was rich. John knew he had a lot to think about and figure out. But for now, as he gazed at the mountain of rubble that had almost become his tomb, he was simply grateful to be alive. He had survived